Hey everybody, welcome to the video and welcome back to the channel if you guys haven't been here in quite some time. But the NASCAR season has finally returned and I'm super excited for another fun year of NASCAR DFS. Had a really good year last season, had a lot of new people come in since it was the only sport on. I think a lot of people turned into NASCAR DFS fans, which was really cool to see. So I'm excited for you guys all to be back and I cannot wait to start making these videos once again. Now I won't mark this the official return because I'm sure the Daytona 500 on Valentine's Day has a lot more hype than the Busch Clash and the Daytona duels, but still we're going to be breaking this race down because it's NASCAR DFS and I will do pretty much every single race that we have. But if you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out and I really do appreciate it. And while you're at it, you might as well hit that notification bell as well so you don't miss out whenever I post new content. And YouTube tells me around 50% of the people watch these videos have not yet subscribed, so if you're a frequent visitor to the channel or if you just new and you like what you see, consider that subscribe button because it really helps the channel grow. And that's obviously going to help me out as well. And if you want to follow me over on social media, I'm at Pennell16 on Twitter, cpen16 over on IG. And if you want to help support the channel over on Patreon, that is always much appreciated. We had several hundred people on there last season. It was a really fun time. We had a really good year. Had several people bink tournaments. I won quite a few myself. The projections seem to be pretty strong, and I offer a lot of extra content on there. I do the free videos, free live streams, every single race on here on YouTube, but there is a lot of extra content on there, including the projections, cheat sheets, GP driver exposure, so you know exactly who I'm playing each and every single week. I can't be more transparent about that. Have notes on there, and I play the 150 max tournament, so if you want to know exactly where my money's going, I make it very transparent for you guys. I have power rankings, which is just based on an algorithm, green flag speed cheat sheet, which I find very useful since we don't have practice anymore these days, and just everything you can see on the bottom of the screen as I scroll through this bar here. But there's a lot of good stuff on there. It's pretty much the only thing I use to build lineups each and every single week. It's a huge database and I find it very helpful, and a lot of people did last year as well. So if you want to support the channel, $10 a month, I think it's actually a pretty strong deal. And we have the Discord chat as well, which is always a fun time. We had a lot of people in there last season. If you want to talk NASCAR at any point of the day, I'm usually up late and I'm usually up early. So if you want to talk NASCAR with me or just ask me questions at any point of the day or just have a good time, you can always hit me up in there. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the plug. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, I did forget to mention a couple of things. But number one, if you guys want me to do a live stream at 5:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow or Tuesday, whenever you're watching this video, I'll be more than happy to do that because I have nothing else to do at that time other than just really breaking down this race. So if you guys want to come in, ask me questions, go over some strategy, because I'll have more information as the day progresses, because I'm doing this video right after I did the qualifying draw, so it's kind of like my first thoughts of this slate. So if you guys want me to do one and there's demand for it, I'll be more than happy to do that. But there has to be demand for it because it's supposed to be an interactive live stream, so if we don't have any people come in and ask me questions, it's going to be a bit of a waste of time. But I will be more than happy to do that. And for the upcoming schedule, I'll do content for the Daytona Duels, and then obviously the Daytona 500 will really kick off the season, and I'll have some stuff that I'll mention in that in the Daytona 500 video that I'll break some news for that. But we definitely have some very exciting things coming, and I cannot wait for it. But anyway, let's get into the preview of this race. So this is the Busch Clash at the Daytona Road Course. Unfortunately, no longer on the oval, so it's not going to be a crash fest like it was last season. If you guys watched the Clash last year, it was a very entertaining race to watch. Erik Jones actually ended up winning that race. He got pushed by his teammate, former teammate, Denny Hamlin, where he wasn't even on the lead lap, but Erik Jones, his car was battered. It was getting held together by duct tape. It was a pretty ugly looking car. I posted a tweet on that a couple of days ago of what it looked like, but unfortunately, that's not going to be the case because we are on the road course now, so we're probably just going to either watch Martin Truex Jr. Chase Elliott win this race, or Denny Hamlin, all solid road course racers, but Chase Elliott, he's in a league of his own when it comes to the road courses recently, but still going to be a solid race nonetheless, and it's the first race of the season, so I'm not really complaining. I am very excited to see cars on the track once again. But obviously this is a road course. It's 3.5 miles in length, give or take. Now we're only going to have 35 laps, meaning 24.5 Dominator points available, which is not a lot at all. So the name of the game for this race is going to be finishing position and a little bit of place differential as well. Now, obviously, if you have the main dominator, that's going to help, and more than likely, it's going to be the winning lineup if you have the main dominator. So, obviously, yeah, we're going to want the guy that leads the most laps and gets the most fast laps. And speaking of fast laps, they actually docked the points on that a little bit. It was 0.5 points for half a point for a fast lap. Now it's 0.45. They also changed some stuff for the finishing positions. They also changed what it was for a win. I'm not going to get into that too much, but if you guys want to know the difference and stuff, I did have it on my primer article that I did post. That is free on my Patreon if you want to check that out. Everything else is behind a paywall, but if you want to see a free article, I did an entire thing on what changed, guys that changed, cars, teams, all that good stuff. It's a really long article, but I think there's a lot of useful information on there that should be able to prime you for the season, went over the scoring changes as well and all that good stuff. But yeah, only 24.5 points here, so dominator points aren't going to be that important, but we're definitely going to want to nail the main dominator in this race. That's pretty much it for the strategy and preview though, so I think without further ado, we can get into the driver by driver breakdown, which I know is everyone's favorite part of the video. Alright guys, so like I said, as soon as the qualifying order dropped, I put it in the spreadsheet, fired up the computer, and I got on the recording, and I started recording this video. So this is really just my first thoughts on the entire slate, and we're going to go through it together. But the one thing I did notice when DraftKings did drop the salaries for this slate, and that the pricing is extremely soft. You can pretty much build whatever lineup you want. Now, obviously, you can't play Elliot, Truex, Hamlin, Harvick, Busch together. That's not possible, but you can very easily make a lineup including Chase Elliott, Truex, probably a Kyle Busch or Ryan Blaney type guy, and then throw in a guy like Eric Almirola, Ricky Cenos Jr., and one of those guys that do offer us some nice place differential. So you can pretty much build whatever lineup you want. That's not going to be an issue, but obviously you have to pick the right guys in those lineups. But anyway, let's start up top with Chase Elliott. He comes in at $10,500. And it's going to be very hard not to play Chase Elliott here. He offers us place differential upside, and more likely than not, he is going to win this race. The guy just does not lose road course races. I believe he's won 4 in a row now. He's the very decently large favorite in Vegas to win this race. And if I had to put money on who's going to win, I would put it on Chase Elliott. The guy's an absolute machine at road courses, and he actually won this race last season at this specific track, the Daytona Road Course. He led the most laps at 34 laps led, had 18 fast laps, just edged out Martin Truex Jr. in that category, scored nearly 70 DraftKings points. Finished first, running position of 3.2, best driver rating. Nothing bad you can say about Chase Elliott. He dominated this race last season. And if you're looking at the track type form for him for the past 10 races at road courses, he checks every single box. In the past 10 races, he's won half of them at road courses. The guy's just absolutely dominant, the most laps led. Slightly below Truex in fast laps, but the guy's been overall dominant. Starting 7th, you get that place differential upside. And if you want to start a guy like Ryan Blaney, Alex Bowman that's starting up front, or even Denny Hamlin, pair him with Chase Elliott, if you think they're going to lead the early portion of this race, then Chase Elliott comes in, dominates, and win the rest of the race. I could definitely see that being a viable strategy for this one. So Elliott, I have a hard time saying he's not the best play on the slate, although Martin Truex Jr. definitely gives him a run for his money because there's not going to be that many dominator points available. Like I mentioned, only 24.5 points. So Truex starting 18th, that's over 2 times further back from where Chase Elliott's starting. That's a lot of place differential upside. And I mean, if I had to say who's going to finish 1-2 in this race, I think very easily that could be Chase Elliott, Martin Truex Jr. in this one. So starting 18th, I love Truex. He finished 3rd in this race last year. He had 16 fast laps, which is right behind Chase Elliott. Those were the 2 best cars in the day. Had 10 laps led, which is only behind Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott, but Hamlin had track position on him to start the race, so had a little bit of an edge there. But yeah, I love Martin Truex Jr. I would say he's the 2nd best road course driver right now, right behind Chase Elliott. Looking at the numbers, the past 10 races at road courses, 3 wins, 6 top 5s, 8 top 10s. Very similar numbers to Chase Elliott, just doesn't have the extra 2 wins that Chase does. But overall, they are very similar drivers at road courses. Both are absolutely elite at these. And starting 18th, I mean, Martin Truex Jr. should grade out the best for me in projections, and I will have a lot of him as it's going to be very, very hard for him to fail in this spot unless he happens to be the first car that wrecks out, if there's any wrecks. Denny Hamlin dropping into this 9K range. He is starting 3rd, so he doesn't offer you the place differential upside, but I would not be surprised if he's the early dominator here. Now, you guys know I love Ryan Blaney. He's my favorite driver in the series. He actually is a pretty good road course driver, but I would not be surprised if Denny Hamlin happens to get a jump on him or Alex Bowman at the start of this race. So if Ryan Blaney doesn't end up leading laps at that spot, going to be hard for him to make the optimal lineup. But I do like Denny Hamlin as a pivot because I'd have to imagine Chase Elliott, Martin Truex Jr., Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, those are going to be the guys up top that carry the most ownership because they are starting further back. And Chase Elliott's just Chase Elliott at road courses. I know he doesn't start as far back as the guys like Truex, Harvick, and Busch, But again, starting 7th, he should win this race more likely than not. But Denny Hamlin starting 3rd. That puts him in a pretty interesting spot. So I think he's probably one of the better tournament plays in this price range, assuming the other guys have more ownership, considering they are starting further back. But yeah, you got to like Denny Hamlin. He led the second most laps in this race last year. He finished 2nd. He actually gave Chase Elliott a run for his money at the very end of that race. Hamlin was giving it all he had, but he didn't have enough to pass Chase Elliott, but he was pretty close there. But the numbers overall at road courses, he doesn't have the wins, but 5 top 5s recently, 6 top 10s. There hasn't really been much of a dominator, only 3.7 laps led per race. It's kind of all been stolen by Martin Truex and Chase Elliott, but Hamlin is a very strong road course driver, and he should be a threat in this one. I'm viewing as more of a, like I said, I'm viewing him as more of a tournament play just because of where he's starting compared to the other guys in this price range, but I would definitely want some exposure to Denny Hamlin as he could very easily dominate and win this race. Kevin Harvick, he comes in at $9,200. He's starting 17th, and everyone loves playing Kevin Harvick. He was the most profitable driver last year. In my spreadsheet, I have the 2020 optimal lineup. He was in the optimal lineup nearly 40% of the time last season. He led all drivers in that. He was right above Ryan Blaney and Denny Hamlin. So I definitely like Kevin Harvick here. Now, the race last season, the Daytona Road Course, he started on the pole, and he did not have a good race whatsoever. I believe he spun out multiple times. He ended up finishing 17th, only had 11 DraftKings points. It's not a good day for Kevin Harvick whatsoever. At a 74.7 driver rating, didn't lead any laps on the pole. Like I said, Denny Hamlin got him early on. But Kevin Harvick is not a bad road course driver. The numbers are overall solid for Kevin Harvick. 45.4 DraftKings points per race, which is only behind the 2 really good drivers of road courses, Chase Elliott and Martin Truex, at average running position of 10.5, has a win, 3 top 5s and 7 top 10s, has some laps led as well. Just didn't really go well for him whatsoever, but he didn't have any practice. They were just throwing cars on the track, so I'm going to give him a pass here. He should be a top 5 contender in this one. I mean, I wouldn't really say I think he's going to win this race, but he could definitely be a contender for it. But he should definitely finish way above from where he's starting in this race. So the price is nice. We know he's an elite level driver, starting 17th. Yeah, I'm definitely going to want some exposure to Kevin Harvick. Dropping down to this 8K range, we have Kyle Busch at $8,900. He's starting 16th, but man, he was awful at the road course last year. Now, again, some things happened. I know he had a tire issue early on, but he finished 37th, had a running position of 20th, average driver rating of 59.8. It did not go well at all for Kyle Busch, and he's definitely had some struggles at road courses recently, but the guy is still an overall solid road course driver. Doesn't have the wins recently, but 4 top 5s, has some laps led, has some fast laps, but he definitely has some struggles in there. So we're going to have to be a little bit careful with Kyle Busch. And I know if you guys played last season, a lot of people had a real sour taste in their mouth with Kyle Busch because he let down each and every single week. The lack of practice was killing him. Now, he wasn't the only one that didn't have practice, so I'm not giving him a free pass there. But practice really helps Kyle Busch because he's a guy that really likes to fine-tune that car. When he can fine-tune his car, good things really happen for Kyle Busch because he knows exactly what he wants out of his car. He didn't have that advantage last year, so it was a real struggle until he won that race late in the season. But starting 16th, he's below $9,000. I mean, more likely than not, unless he has an issue in this race, he should finish well above where he's starting, should contend for a top 10, top 5 finish. And at that price point, elite level driver like Kyle Busch has a race under his belt from last season there, so at least he learned a little bit there. I like Kyle Busch. I mean, I know a lot of people don't love playing Kyle Busch, especially from last season, but I'm willing to give him a shot here despite the pretty poor performance he had last season at the Daytona Road Course. Now, Ryan Blaney at $8,600. So I'm assuming this is going to be a big question mark for people. Are they going to want to play Ryan Blaney in the pool at $8,600 on a race that only has 35 laps? Because I can very easily see him losing the lead to maybe even a guy like Alex Bowman or Denny Hamlin early on if he doesn't happen to have having a good jump. Now, I fully believe in Ryan Blaney here. I think he can lead some laps and he should have a strong finish. He's a pretty good road course driver, but man, he did not have a good time whatsoever at the road course last season at Daytona. He finished 31st. Now, late in the race, he was making a strong push. I want to say he was inside the top 12, but he missed a spot and he ended up getting a bit of a, I think it was like a penalty or something at the end of the race. Really killed him because I had a lot of Ryan Blaney because he started pretty far back and he started 12th, and then last thing I know, he finishes in the 30s. I had no idea what happened. I had to find a video on Twitter, but had a bit of an issue there. The running position was much better than where he finished. He had a running position of 14.4 compared to the average finish of 31. So again, he is not a terrible road course driver. He's not a terrible road course driver, even though he did finish 31st here last season. If we're looking at the overall numbers of the past 10 races at these, they are pretty darn good. An average finish of 11.6, and that's including that terrible finish he had at the road course last year. Has a win, which was at the Charlotte Roval, which is the most comparable road course track at which I'd say is the most comparable road course to the Daytona one. So I think Ryan Blaney is definitely a threat to lead laps in this race. It's just, if he loses the lead early on and falls outside the top 5, there's a very, very good chance he's not going to make the optimal lineups. I wouldn't say he's a super safe play, but if he can hold the lead, pick up some fast laps, get some laps led, have a strong top 5 finish, I think he can pay off his price point, $8,600, and have a chance to make the optimal. I'm just saying I definitely like these place differential guys a bit more over Ryan Blaney, just because only 24.5 dominator points, and I have a hard time seeing him lead the entire race. So I wouldn't say he's a slam dunk play, but definitely a fine tournament option. Just, I wouldn't say a favorite play for mine on this slate. Now, Brad Keselowski, he comes in at 8,400. He is starting 4th, and he's a guy I'm not in love with here. He finished 13th here last season, which isn't awful, but it's not that great, especially if he's starting 4th. Now, if we're looking at the overall numbers for the road courses the past 10 races, he's not a bad road course driver, but I wouldn't say he's an elite one either. Has an average finish of 14.2, running position of 11.8, 2 top 5s, no wins, only 3 top 10 finishes. Does have some laps led, but I think he's a very iffy play here. Now, firstly, I'll just be transparent here. I'm going to play everybody on this slate. I'm just going to have to mix and match them right when it comes to my 150 max lineups. Obviously, I'm going to have to go heavier on guys that I believe in more, but I don't see myself being too heavy on Brad Keselowski. I mean, the price is nice, and obviously he's an elite level driver. Most of these guys that are in the Clash are the best drivers in the series. It's just, starting 4th, I feel like his potential is way lower than a guy like Busch, Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., Chase Elliott for where they're starting. But if you want a guy that's going to be decently low owned on a slate that only has 21 drivers, I think Keselowski would be one of those guys. Just wouldn't say he's one of my favorite drivers. Joey Logano, 8,100. He is starting 10th. He does not have a great history at the road courses recently, only averaging 22 Draftkings points per races at these, 16.9 average finish, running position of 16.1, drive rating of 77.4, which is actually the worst of any driver we've talked about yet. No wins, only 1 top 5, 4 top 10s, and only half a lap led per race. So I don't love it. Now, if you're looking at the 2020 season of how he was at road courses, he actually averaged 40.9 DraftKings points per race, had an average finish of 5.5, had a top 5 finish as well. So I wouldn't count out Joey Logano. I like the price tag, and I like where he's starting. So I definitely like getting exposure to him. He did finish in the top 10 in this race, and he had a pretty good run at the Roval this season. So starting 10th, I think he's a pretty solid play. I mean, obviously he's not as good of a play as Busch, Harvick, Truex, those guys, but he's not priced like that either. He's in a really nice price range. I'm not sure if he's going to be super popular because he is starting 10th, so he's kind of in that no man's land. So if he's going to be a little bit lower owned, I think he's actually maybe a decent way to get different and go overweight in the field on Joey Logano. I'm not saying he's my favorite play, but at that price point where he's starting, and if he can get into the top 5, I like his chances on this one. So dropping into the 7K range, we have Alex Bowman at $7,900. He is starting 2nd. Not sure how popular he's going to be because he's starting on the outside of Ryan Blaney, and I feel like people, if they're going to play someone in the front row, they'd gravitate towards Ryan Blaney because he's got the preferred spot, which I would definitely see myself having more Ryan Blaney over Alex Bowman. But again, I think Bowman would be a pretty strong tournament play. He's actually pretty good at road courses, and at the Roval, which is a pretty similar track, he's very good at the Roval. Had some really strong finishes at those recently. Now, he was a very popular play at the Daytona Road Course last year because of where he was starting. He was starting near the back, and he had a pretty good race. Now, it took him a while because he ended up going a lap down. He was doing really bad for us for quite some time. As you can see, an average running position of 23.1, but he got his lap back, ended up finishing 12th, good for 48 DraftKings points, so he saved his day, finished inside the top 15 with a 12th place finish. So he's a good road course driver. It's just starting 2nd. More than likely he's going to lose some spots here, and this is a slate that's going to have a very heavy emphasis on where you're going to finish compared to where you were starting and things like that, because I don't see him dominating over guys like Hamlin, Blaney early on. Then at that point, Chase Elliott, Truex, those guys will be coming right down his throat. So Bowman, he's a very, very iffy tournament play. I would say he'd be one of my lower owned exposures drivers for me on this one, just because I have a hard time seeing him make optimal, but the price is cheap. It's just, from where he's starting, I could very easily see him falling outside of the top 5 in this one. William Byron, 7,700. He's starting 5th. Kind of a similar spot for him compared to Alex Bowman, but he is starting 3 spots further back, so you have a little bit more upside there. It's just, I don't really see him finishing above where he starts, and on this slate, that's going to be pretty important. Like, there's a lot of guys that offer us place differential. Like, Eric Almirola starting 21st. I think he could very easily outscore William Byron, even if he just finishes like around 15th or 10th. Byron, he's going to have to hold a spot. I mean, there's a chance he could get a top 5, but I just don't think it's likely with the drivers that we have. Like, do we really think Byron's going to finish above Elliot, Truex, Hamlin, Harvick, Busch, Keselowski, Logano? I just don't see that happening. I have nothing against William Byron. He's actually a decent road course driver. He did finish 8th here last season, but I just don't really see it happening unless he somehow gets up front, leads some laps, and finishes inside the top 5. But I just feel like that is very unlikely. Now, if we're looking at his history of road courses, past 10 races, running position of 13.1, no top 5s, has 4 top 10s and 8.9 laps led per race. But even then, I just have a hard time seeing Byron get into the optimal lineup, so I'd have to imagine he's going to be one of my lower exposed drivers in this one. But a guy I do like quite a bit, Busch here at $7,400. He's starting 15th, and he's a pretty good road course racer. Now, he did finish 14th here last season, but if we're looking at the past 10 races at these types of tracks, average finish inside the top 10, 42.4 Draftkings points per race, which is only behind Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex, and Chase Elliott, even above Ryan Blaney and Kyle Busch and Brett Keselowski. So I actually like Busch quite a bit here. 2 top 5s, 7 top 10s. Like I said, he finished 14th here last season, but I could see him getting inside the top 10. The price is nice. And I feel like if people are going to go top heavy, they're probably going to gravitate towards a stars and scrubs lineup. So guys in the 7K range could get overlooked, and if Busch is going to get overlooked, I definitely want to be overweight in the field on Busch here, because I could very easily see him sliding into the top 10, maybe even contend for a top 5 if things go well for him. And so at $7,400, you can definitely count me in on Busch in this one. Now, Erik Jones at $7,200. So my big question, or at least I didn't really ask this question, but I asked myself this question. I was saying, is DraftKings going to overprice Erik Jones at the start of the season? Because he did switch cars. If you guys don't know that, he was in the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, top of the line team, top of the line equipment. I mean, great stuff. He is now in the 43 car, the car that Bubba Wallace was driving. And if you guys don't know anything about the 43 car, it definitely does not have top tier equipment. We're probably talking like a 15th, 20th place finish for Erik Jones most weeks this season if he happens to drive the car very, very well. Now, I think Erik Jones is a more talented driver than Bubba Wallace, but there's nothing you can do if the equipment's not as good. So starting 9th here, Erik Jones is probably going to fall back quite a few spots here. I feel like he's overpriced, and I think DraftKings will probably catch up to this at some point, but if they're going to overprice him at the start of the season, Erik Jones will probably be a pretty strong fade candidate. But starting 9th, he's fine at road courses, but the equipment is not the same that he had. If he was in the 20 car, I'd say he's a fine tournament play, but now in the 43 car, I have some pretty low expectations here. Now, he could contend for a top 10 if he happens to drive the car well. It's just, I think it's very unlikely. So Erik Jones, I mean, I'll probably just sprinkle him in just in case magic happens, but I think it is pretty unlikely in this one. If you're betting 1 lineup or 3 lineups, I probably wouldn't go anywhere towards Erik Jones. Dropping down to the 6K range, Matt DiBenedetto, 6,900, Matty D. Starting 12th, I think he's an interesting play here. So the race last season, he did finish 15th, which is not great, but he is not a bad road course driver. Looking at the past 10 races, 10 races for MDB. I was wondering if he actually had 10 races under his belt. Again, it's not pretty, but you had to keep in mind now, he's in some pretty good equipment. He used to be in the 95 car, now he's in the 21 car, which is pretty much a Penske car for the Wood brothers. So he should definitely outperform the numbers you're seeing on his screen, because the majority of those races were in lower level equipment. But he does have a top 5 at road course before, 2 top 10s and 5 top 15s. I can't imagine he's going to be too popular, because Aric Almirola, I imagine he's going to be one of the highest owned drivers on the slate. I know he doesn't have the greatest history in the world of road courses, but again, he's starting dead last. We only have 21 cars. He's $6,600. The guy's in good equipment. He's a good driver. He should be able to move up some spots. Not saying he's going to get a top 5 finish or a top 10 here, but even a top 15 would be good enough for me for Aric Almirola. So you can only move up from here. So I'd imagine he's going to soak up most of the ownership. Ricky Stenhouse as well. So Matt DiBenedetto should come in a little bit lower owned, and he could definitely contend for a top 10, top 8 finish here. And if Aric Almirola has some issues or just finishes like 20th or 21st and he outscores them, he'll definitely have some leverage on the field. So MDB, I think he's a fine tournament play. Not sure I'd go there in cash games, but I do like him in tournaments. Aric Almirola at $6,600. I just talked about it. He's not the greatest road course driver in the world, but again, you don't have to be if you're starting dead last. He should be able to move up some spots. Now, he did finish 24th here in the race at Daytona Road Course last season. I know that's not great, but he did have an average running position much better than that. He did have an average running position of 15.9 compared to his average finish of 24th, so that's at least a little bit promising. Looking at his overall numbers, average finish of 16.1, running position of 18.2, no top 5s, but 2 top 10s and 4 top 15s. If he can just hit his averages, that'll be more than enough on this slate. I think he's a the guy you're going to definitely want to play in cash games because he opens up salary. He's starting dead last. He should be able to move up at least a few spots. So Almirola, he's like your cash game guy that you want that is pretty darn cheap. Tyler Reddick, $6,300. I'm going to have a hard time playing Tyler Reddick starting 6. Now, again, I'm going to try to get exposure to everybody here in case something crazy happens, but I'm going to have a hard time seeing Tyler Reddick make the optimal for where he's starting because I think it's a near lock that he's going to lose some spots here. He finished 18th last season, had an average running position of 23.4. Again, he was a rookie, so I guess we'll cut him a little bit of slack, but again, I just can't see him really. He could contend for a top 10, but I just don't see him finishing over guys like Elliot, Truex, Hamlin, Harvick, Busch, Blaney. I have a hard time seeing that happen. He's a very good driver. He was the best rookie last season. If we're looking at the 2 races at road courses he has an average finish of 15th and average running position of 20th. So I think it's very likely he's going to lose some spots here. Now Ricky Cenos Jr. $6,100. He is starting 20th. Not a great road course driver, but he can consistently get inside the top 20. He has 7 top 20 finishes and 1 top 15. Looking at how he did in the race here last season, he did finish 16th. Now, I know that's not too impressive, but if he did that again, we would be more than happy with that. At only $6,100, I'd have to imagine he's going to be one of the higher owned drivers on this slate, but I am all about that. Now, again, you can get some leverage if you want to fade that. I know a lot of you don't like rostering Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Ricky Spinhouse, Recky Spinhouse, whatever you want to call him. I mean, he doesn't have that nickname for no reason, but at $6,100, he's going to really open up your lineup, and it's going to allow you to get in guys like Elliot, Truex, Hamlin, all those guys. So I think he's a needed salary relief on this site. It might not be pretty, but if he can gain some spots, it'll definitely work at that price point. Chris Buescher starting off this $5,000 range, he's starting 13th. And I actually think he's a very, very strong tournament play because, again, I mentioned that Eric Almirola, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., maybe even Austin Dillon starting 19th. These guys should soak up the most ownership on this slate. But you can get Buescher. I know he's starting a little bit high up, so it's going to be very hard for him to gain spots relative to the guys that are going to be around him. Like, he's going to have to finish above guys like Eric Jones, Kurt Busch, William Byron, Alex Bowman. And those guys aren't the most appealing for DFS, but he's still going to have to finish above them to be a really strong play. But even if he holds his 13th spot and those other guys don't perform well, it's not the worst GPP play in the world. He actually did finish 5th in this race last season, good for 55 DraftKings points. And the guy is not that bad at road courses whatsoever. And now, relative to his price point, he's not amazing, but an average finish of 15.1. In the past 10 races, he's finished inside the top 20 each and every single time, with 4 top 15s, a top 10, and the top 5 that we saw last season. So more of a tournament play relative to where he is starting. But I do like being overweight on Chris Buescher if he can happen to have a really good run like he did last season. Cole Custer, he is very, very cheap at $5,800. The only problem is he is starting 8th, but at the 2 road course races last season, he did have a top 10 finish, average 40.5 DraftKings points per race with an average finish of 15.5. How he finished at Daytona, it was 22nd, so obviously much worse than what he did at the Charlotte Roval. And I really have a hard time seeing him not lose spots here, so I'm not going to be too excited about playing Cole Custer. Maybe I'll sprinkle him in if you're max entering. But if you're building 1, 2, 3, even 10 lineups, I'm probably not getting to Cole Custer because I feel like there's just better cheap options on this slate. Austin Dillon at $5,700. He did not run this race last year, and if you guys remember, he got hit with COVID. So he had a replacement driver come in. He actually had a very strong run. Now, Austin Dillon's not the greatest road course driver in the world whatsoever. Has an average DraftKings points per race of 18, average finish of 24.8, driver rating of 59, which I believe is the worst that we've gone over any single driver so far. No top 5s, no top 10s, not even a top 15, and only 3 top 20s the past 9 races at road courses. So it definitely hasn't been a good running for Austin Dillon at these track types, but starting 19th, I'll have some exposure in case he can gain a few spots, but I don't have high expectations for Austin Dillon, but it'd mainly just be a price and starting position play because we can't get too picky because we only have 21 drivers here, but I do have low expectations for Austin Dillon here. Ryan Newman, he's starting 11th. He's only $5,600. Ryan Newman is the most boring play ever. He's always going to sit around that 15th to 20th place range, and it felt more so last season. He was in that 20th to 25th place range more often than he was in the 15th to 20th place range. He finished 19th here last season. Looking at his numbers at road courses, not super impressive. They're not terrible, but they're really not that great. Average finish of 20.8, driver rating of 61, which I believe is the second worst we've gone over so far. Only 1 top 10, 3 top 15s, and 5 top 20s. I'm not going to have a lot of exposure to Ryan Newman here. I think more than likely he's going to lose some spots and probably quite a few. Then Ty Dillon at $5,500. So for some reason, the data source I use to get these numbers, it is not pulling Ty Dillon. But if you're looking at how he finished last season at this, he finished 20th. But the thing with Dillon is he is no longer in the 13 car. And actually something interesting for this race is that he's actually running in Bubba Wallace's car, the 23 car, because Bubba was not eligible for the Clash this year, but Ty Dillon was. Now Ty Dillon's going to be in the 96 car this season for a few races, but he's going to be in the 23 car, which definitely has some better equipment because they have a ton of funding. It's the team that Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan are funding. But the problem is he is starting 14th, and really I can't expect him to do that well. I think he's really just going to be a practice session for the 23 team to get it prepped for Bubba Wallace when he runs it on the actual race, which is going to be in a few weeks at this track. So I'm not expecting a lot of good things here for Ty Dillon. He's the cheapest driver, but I think that's definitely deserved. I think he finishes outside the top 15, even though he does have good equipment, but I assume this is going to be more of a test run for that team to see how it, responds on the track. But I think that's pretty much going to be it, guys. So hope this video was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. Follow me over on social media if you haven't already. Handles in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. If you want to help support the channel over on Patreon, I really do appreciate that. I put a lot of work into this each and every single week, and there's a lot of extra good content on there. It's only $10 a month, so I think it's a pretty darn good deal. You'll also get into the Discord chat it up with me, articles, projections, cheat sheets, and all that good stuff that I talked about earlier. But I'm going to stop rambling, so I'll see you guys in the next video, and let me know if you want to live stream at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'll be more than happy to do that.